Welcome back to episode 4 of What's the Deal, where we break down a lifter's technique and, so far, interview them and ask them what they're doing in this particular lift. So we've had Gabriel, Miso, Anton Plesnoy so far. So we've done Anton's clean, Gabriel's jerk, Miso's clean as well. And today we're doing Viktor Getz. So we got Viktor Getz for an interview. Very, very nice man. Nice guy, Viktor. So we're doing his clean as well. I know we need to get some snatches, and I have someone lined up for the snatch next. Well, I'll try have them lined up. I had another lifter, a world record holder, but I got ghosted. So the important thing is with these is you do a lot of likes and a lot of comments to keep them going. So today's video is going to be, we're going to look at the basics of Viktor's clean and why it's good. We're going to look at some of the nuance of his clean. We're going to go to that interview and listen to Viktor talking about his training and primarily his clean training. And then we're going to talk about some of the interesting things that he said in that interview. Look at Viktor's clean from a basic point of view. There's 2 or 3 things that I think people watching this, if you're new to the clean or you're even an intermediate, that you can learn a lot from in the clean that will help you. 2, 3 small things that make a big difference. And these kind of basic things he's clean that Viktor doesn't really think about anymore, or very, very little going by an interview. But for you, there can be some very, very important things. One is the one I've talked about a lot in the recent weightlifting videos we've been talking about, is Viktor maintains the hook grip in the turnover and catch of the clean. Now, as we've said before, this is optional. However, it is also preferable. It is a much better turnover. You get a stronger turnover. Sometimes you get a faster turnover. And you also get a very, very strong and consistent bottom position in the rack position of the clean at the bottom. You get this nice secure position. Your back is upright. It's forcing you to stay a little bit upright. Your elbows are high. Your back's in a good position. And it makes that stand up nice and smooth. So if you can do this and you have the requisite mobility, holding the hook grip is very, very, very much preferable. It also makes the transition from the jerk a lot smoother as your hands are in a good position. They're very, very close to where you would want them in the split jerk when you go to re-rack the barbell. Whereas if we let go of the barbell, oftentimes we can get a looser turnover, we can get a lot of barbell crash, and then we can end up with a lot of fidgeting and a lot of extraneous variable hand movement when we're trying to readjust for the jerk. So maintaining the hook grip is always preferable if you can do it. However, it's not always an option for some people, but if you can work your way up to there or learn how to practice that, then it is a huge bonus. Second aspect of Viktor's technique that is very, very, very useful and very, very productive to a beginner's technique and everyone's technique in general. Viktor's back position is flexed and he's in an arched, strong position from the ground, and it's very rigid, and he maintains this throughout the whole lift. Viktor mentions in the interview, he talks about keeping tight lats. Now this isn't pulling our shoulder blades back and our shoulders down. Gabriel has talked about this as well. It's keeping a tension in your upper back, treating your back like it's an isometric muscle. That's why we're a huge fan of barbell rows for our weightlifters in particular, is learning to treat your back like an isometric without having to, depress your scapula, retract your shoulder blades, none of that. You're just keeping your back in as tight a position as possible without huge extraneous movement of your shoulders. So 2 things you can learn a lot from Viktor's clean is tight back and keep the hook grip. These are very, very useful. And if Viktor can do it with 205, it's probably useful for your 100 kilo cleans. Not that I'm taking a jab at anyone for cleaning 100 kilos. We all have to start somewhere. Huh? I might be taking a jab. So if we look at some of the more nuanced aspects of Viktor's clean in terms of his pulling speed or bar catch height, for example, these are things that are very individualized when we get to an advanced level. They're not something you should be copying per se, but these are very, very useful aspects to consider in a lifter's technique, as these may be something you will have to consider eventually in your career in relation to your technique and your pulling speed. So for example, the first one we look at, the first nuance, is Viktor's pulling speed is something that is quite interesting. Viktor mentions in the interview that he has a front squat of 210 kilos when he clean and jerk to 205 kilos. So with this, Viktor's leg strength is something that limits him. What we do see with Viktor's clean is bar speed is very, very similar in his first and second pull or first and second phases. So the bar speed, oftentimes in the best lifters, and preferably we'll see a drastic change in first pull to second pull. It's a little bit less of a drastic change in the clean compared to the snatch. But in the clean, we see fast on the floor, but very, very distinctive fast second pull. So it was often known as the 2-beat rhythm of the lift. So fast on the floor, extremely fast second pull. With Viktor's, what we see is a heavy emphasis on the first phase, and then we see a very similar speed in the second phase of the pull. So what we'll typically see, for example, if the first pull is taken as 100% of value, what we generally like to see is our second pull 120%, so about 20% faster than our initial speed off the floor. So if we have 1 meters per second off the ground, we want to see something like 1.2 meters per second going into our second pull and all along that second pull. That would be ideal for our bar speed or our velocity. However, if we look at someone like Viktor, where the emphasis is on the first phase, we see something like 100 to 105%. So that bar speed looks like it's slowing down the second pull, which it's definitely not. The barbell would never slow down in the second pull. But we do see at Viktor's heavier cleans that the bar speed almost looks slower because this distance is a little bit longer than that first pull, and he's putting a lot of effort into it. And typically what we see and what we're trained to see is a faster second pull, because that's what we're used to. Whereas Viktor, there's a high emphasis on speed off the ground, which is important because his leg strength isn't as high as his pulling strength, for example. So this pull is a result of Viktor's favoured pulling strength as opposed to his leg strength. He is someone who has a stronger pull compared to his front squat. And we did see he sent that he has a 260 kilo back squat. But in terms of these mechanics of that pull, it's heavily in favour of his pulling strength, and he's relying on this as much as possible. Rather, he is favouring the deficit from his legs, where he has to work a little bit harder in that second pull. So he's getting as much bar speed as he can in the first pull to get close to that optimal speed for the second pull. Next, in relation to Viktor's technique, in the nuances of his technique, we have some very efficient lifting in terms of the clean in relation to his height. So the maximum height Viktor's bar reaches in relation to his height is very, very low, and I would suspect, without having been able to measure his bar height and measure Viktor's actual height, we can see it's a very, very low percentage of his height in terms of relation to how high the barbell gets. Typically, we'll see a range of, in the clean, somewhere between 55 to 65%. The average lifter doing about 60% in terms of efficiency. For a more advanced lifter, we'll see about 60% of the lifter's height is about the maximum height the clean will reach. Whereas I suspect that in Viktor's cleans, we're looking at much closer to that lower end range. So probably closer to somewhere maybe 55% of his clean. You'll see at the max cleans, he is nearly rock bottom. Whereas if you look at a lot of other lifters, we'll typically see things like a lot of amateur lifters, we'll see well above parallel where the barbell is first met initially, and then where we'll see the barbell is finished at the bottom, we'll see well above parallel, almost at the bottom of our jerk dip, and then the barbell will be ridden down to the bottom of the clean, which is a huge issue a lot of lifters have. A lot of lifters will focus on over pulling the barbell, over contact, pulling the barbell as high as possible and riding it down. Whereas generally what we want to see is efficient maximum speed under the barbell. Someone like Anton, for example, will take this to a extreme in terms of his leg extension in the clean. Whereas with Viktor, we see him hit full extension or close to full extension, but still keeping that barbell nice and tight. So it's not a either or, it's a kind of what works for that lifter. And that's kind of the nuances of the technique, is you have to find those. Now we do see with barbell height in the lifts, for example, how high a barbell starts or the maximum height a barbell reaches decreases with time as the lifter's efficiency increases in their experience. So don't necessarily worry about getting the barbell as low as possible in your training. Focus on finishing your extension and getting under as fast as possible, and this distance then will start to decrease as your lifting career continues. Viktor, thanks for coming on the channel. So do you want to tell people a little about your kind of best weightlifting performances, your best snatch, clean and jerk, just so people get an idea?
Okay, my best clean jerk 200 in competition, and in training 205.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, snatch is 163 at competition and 165 at training.
Very cool. Do you have a video of the 205? I don't think I've seen that. I've seen your 200s.
Instagram.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So Viktor, what we want to do is just learn a little bit about how your clean is so good, because your clean technique is so precise. It's very, very nice to look at. It's very consistent. So how did you first learn to do the clean when you were younger?
You know, my father is my coach, so I start weightlifting at 6.
Okay.
I didn't remember the best way to how I learned it. I didn't remember it. I don't remember it. It was 20 years ago. I don't know. It wasn't so hard at the young age because it was a good stretch. I have good stretch. I have good coordination.
So it came pretty easy to you at the start, the clean?
Yeah. I have some photo on my Instagram when I was young. It was the same bottom position at the and the young and age, and when I was the professional weightlifter.
Yes, it's good. Same. You've a really nice upright bar.
Yeah, it seems the same. I think.
And can you remember what your training looked like for your clean or your clean and jerk at that age?
I don't know. You know, I train 3 times per week, and it was a lot of not only clean jerk and snatch. It was a lot of other stuff.
Yes.
Jumping, training, some a lot of aerobic.
Okay. Yes, and you feel like this helped you get in shape for weightlifting in general?
Yeah. We at the 6 age, I didn't only hard training. I did a lot of exercises to stretch, to coordination, to exploding power, jumps.
And what age did you start? Do you feel like you started the kind of hard training for a professional athlete?
I think 14, maybe.
Okay. And so when you were 14, what was your best clean and jerk?
180.
180?
18. Yeah.
180. Okay. 180 is crazy. So 118. And what age did you first clean and jerk 200 kilos?
19.
19. Okay. So you went from 118 to 200 in 5 years. So really good progress. So when you were like maybe 14, 15, how often were you doing clean and jerks, just full clean and jerks in training?
You know, different type of preparation to competition was different types of training. So if I have competition in maybe 2 months, I have competition preparation. I increase competition exercises, snatch and clean and jerk. I did it 3 or 4 times per week.
Okay.
Maybe even every training I did not intense clean and jerk, but some light clean jerk I did.
And did you do many variations of the clean at that age?
Yeah. I usually I did Monday, Wednesday, and Friday straight clean jerk, and Tuesday or Saturday power clean and jerk, power clean and jerk, or power clean and not split.
Power jerk?
Power jerk, yeah.
Yes. Okay, what was your best power clean?
160. I don't very good on this.
This kind of training was the same thing you did until you clean and jerk 205. This is same kind of Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
We have variation in intensity. We have variation in power clean, straight clean, no feed clean, a lot of variation, but intensity is important too.
Yeah. So was there any of these variations that you felt really helped your clean, like the no foot clean or block cleans? Was any of those stuff do you feel like really helped your clean?
I didn't like box clean. I like hand clean. Is this right?
Yeah, yep, exactly. What kind of weights did you get up to on the hand clean?
Hand clean, I did 180 maybe.
Okay.
Not 190. I don't have some power legs. My best front squat was 210.
210.
Yeah.
And you clean jerk 205. What? That's crazy.
Yeah. I tried maybe 10 times to front squat 215, and I can't.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so efficient. Do you think you would have clean and jerked more if you could have front squatted more?
Maybe, yeah. But I just can't. I did 3 times. I didn't remember which year, but I did 3 times per week front squat, and I just can't do more. It was a lot of variation in intensity. I did 190 for 3 or 4. I did 200 for 2, and I just can't do
More.
215 or 220.
And what was your best back squat? Was it much beyond your front squat?
Back squat 260.
Okay. And do you think you should have been able to front squat more than 210 when your back squat was 260? Or is that a good ratio, do you think?
I don't know. The limitation, what was limitation factor? Maybe middle spine, middle back.
Yeah.
Was not so strong. I don't know.
And on those variations you did you go for heavy weights, or was this lighter weights and practice technique, on the no foot clean, the block cleans? Were they always kind of lighter than your best clean and jerk?
A lot these variations was for technique works. I think heavy cleans was only straight cleans. I didn't do just clean. I did clean and jerk, clean and push, clean and not just clean. Because in competition you did clean and jerk. You don't get clean and throw it to the platform.
Yes.
It's the psychological thing, I think.
Yes, I get you. And did you ever do any heavy deadlifts or heavy pulls? Do you know what your best deadlift might have been?
My best deadlift 240 maybe. 240.
Okay. And did you ever try more, or was that enough for your clean and jerk?
It was the heaviest I have. 240. It was the my max.
Okay.
I just don't can even more, even 1 kilo.
So yeah, it's enough for 205 though, obviously. In terms of when you're thinking about lifting and you're doing your clean specifically, was there any thoughts in your head that you thought about consistently, maybe like a strong back or something like that? Was there any thoughts?
I tried two variation of preparing to clean is touch and go and engage, and another is engaging lots and prepare for maybe 15 seconds before clean. I touch, I grab the bar and
Yep.
I have to engage my lats to take a breath and maybe touch and go was the better for me because I can just think that I can't do this. I just do and
Yes.
the muscle feeling is I know how to lift, and a muscle feeling is do it
Yes.
instead of my
Yeah, that makes more perfect sense. It feels more natural for you to just touch and go. So that's similar to like Alien or Yuri Verdanian kind of
yeah.
starts. And was there anything you were thinking about throughout the pull that you always thought about?
uh, Only thing was how to get to exploding position.
Okay.
It was the hardest to me to pull high. Yeah, it was only thing that I thought uh, how to get it higher before explosion.
And do you mean higher up your leg or get the bar
Yeah,
higher up?
yeah, at my legs.
Okay. Did you think about, did you have a mistake sometimes where you'd
Yeah,
pull too low?
yeah, yeah. It was the common mistake for me that I just start to straight before I finish my pull. Yeah.
And were you always so fast under the barbell in your clean?
Yeah, I just have to. I don't have a lot of power to get it higher while explosion. That's why I the speed instead of this.
And were you good at plyometrics and jumping drills? Were you always good at those?
Yeah, I did it at the training, and I quite good in this.
How often were you doing those in training?
At Yath, when I was young, I
Mhm.
did it maybe not every training, but often, and then maybe two time per week.
Did you ever do in training things like complexes, like clean pull, clean front squat jerk kind of thing?
Yeah, I did clean squat and clean and jack, maybe 180.
So would you look at people online, on Instagram and lifting competitions? What do you think are some of the more common mistakes people make in the clean specifically?
Maybe they um, straight their legs first, then their glutes. You know, uh, their back
Mm-hmm.
became smooth first,
Yes.
then the knees. Yeah.
So do you think they should kind of keep more pressure on their knees and quads in the
Yeah,
first pull?
yeah.
If you were teaching someone the lifts and the clean at the moment, how would you teach them, do you think?
I think it will be progression from hand power clean first, then hand full clean,
Mm-hmm.
then um, lower hand
Yeah.
power clean, this this way.
And do you think so? You hold a hook grip in the rack position. Was that something?
Yeah,
Is that something you think other people should do if they're able to do it?
it's hard to. It's depend of wrist mobility, it is lats mobility, serratus.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know English.
yeah.
Um, it's depend from these muscles how it's tight or it depends of mobility of.
Did you have any issues with mobility? So you said you were when you were younger, you were very flexible. Did that carry all the way?
Yeah, I always did exercise for mobility, for improving mobility. I stretch after after every training.
What kind of stuff did you do?
Um, it was an active stretching and passive stretching, maybe half passive, half active stretching, just stretching exercises.
And for that front rack mobility, because a lot of people struggle with that. A lot of amateur lifters struggle with front rack. Was there any ones in particular you found very effective?
I think you have to turn forward your elbows to 45 degrees, maybe.
Yes.
Anybody want to rotate it to 90 degrees, but I think it's not necessary.
Yeah.
It's enough for 40, maybe 45 degrees. So the good exercises for stretching is lats stretching, like
yes,
and with I don't know, bench stretching when you take the bar and
yes. Oh yes, I know that one. Yeah, that's a good one. Viktor, do you have any other advice for people if they're struggling with their clean at the moment? Do you have any advice for them?
My advice will be about the speed after the second pull, how to get bottom higher. It's about hand power clean. It's increasing the speed of your getting down. Yeah, increasing the speed is will help. If you like me don't have enough power to get it higher while explosion, you must have enough speed to get under. So you can increase the speed.
Is that hang power clean or a hang clean, a full clean?
Hang power clean, I think. It's speed of rotating elbows to because the people who just teach clean, they have very poor speed of rotating elbows.
Okay. And would you recommend people do that for try get heavier weights, or would you recommend people do more like sets of 2 and 3 repetitions?
Set with low reps, but increasing speed, and it must be I don't know how to say. You must train speed, not strength. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That I think makes sense. I get you. Viktor, thank you so much for doing this. It's really helpful. It's great to see what some of the best lifters do in their training, and it helps people a lot.
You're welcome.
So I hope you enjoyed that interview with Viktor. There is some very, very interesting points from that I just wanted to go over. I really appreciated Viktor taking his Saturday morning to talk to me about his lifting. One of the more notable things, I think, is Viktor mentioned that he had no problem learning the lifts as a child. And we do see this typically with children and preteens and early teens as well, is that they learn the technique of the lifts very, very easily. And oftentimes they will end up learning the correct technique through either visually watching other lifters or through minimal teaching of the lifting. Eventually they will conform to the best technical patterns without a huge amount of technical direction. They're not going to be considering their first and second pull. A lot of times they will lift the barbell in what feels the most efficient way. So rather, when we get to adults, what we'll often see is adults will lift the barbell in typically the worst way, opposite of what a optimal bar pat would look like. Whereas with children, what we see a lot of time is we see children or preteens, early teens, learning a lift that is very, very close to the optimal bar pat without a huge amount of physical direction or a huge amount of teaching, as this is feel the most efficient to them. They'll rely mostly on technique rather than brute strength, as obviously they are not in possession of brute strength. So something very, very interesting about that. Viktor mentioned it was no problem for him to learn the cleans as a child, so quite interesting. Then he does a lot of general training, which is something that should always be emphasized. Always with children, lots of different kind of training, running, jumping, coordination, plyometric work. All of this is phenomenal for children, which is something we've talked about a lot before. The broader the base at the childhood, the better that athlete will be later in life. The more skills you learn, the better your ability to learn skills later in life, the better capacity your body will have to this, the better your tendons, ligaments will be, the better those certain parts of your brain that could be used for skill development will be developed as much as they possibly allowed in your genetics. So always very important. Next is Viktor clean and jerked 118 kilos at 14 years old. Now look, Viktor almost certainly wasn't taking any performance enhancing drugs when he was 14. That's just talent and years spent training. By the time he was 14, he had something in the region. He had about 8 years spent training. You know, when we look at systems or other countries who do not have the best weightlifting prospects, there's something you just can't beat in weightlifting. Even if you have a lot of talent, something you can't really beat in terms of weightlifting is time spent training and time spent doing that sport. So, for example, by the time a lot of these lifters are 18, they have something in the region of, maybe 12 to 15 years of weightlifting experience done. So if you imagine yourself in that scenario, even if you start at 16, by the time you're 26, where a lot of these would have won world championships, European juniors, world juniors, anything like that, they may have been to maybe 2 Olympics at this stage. They have nearly 20 years of lifting finished by the time they're 26. For a lot of us, you might only have a decade of lifting. Some of you might have 6 months. Some of you might be in your 40s. So just understand this concept of time spent training is still very, very important, but time spent training with the best athletes is still very important to that. So the best can get best or get better faster, but ultimately the best athletes still need a lot of time training. So 118 of 14 is something that is hard to compete with in a lot of realms. Then next aspect he talked about is the kind of classic heavy Monday, Wednesday and Friday. Now there could be a thought process, and I maybe would have conformed to this maybe a few years ago, where that side of training, very heavy Monday, Wednesday and Friday, so big emphasis on snatch and clean and jerk on Monday, Wednesday and Fridays, and then kind of Tuesday and Saturday bigger days, and then Thursday, depending on the country, it was either very light day or rest or one session, or similar to Tuesday and Saturday is kind of a variation of the lifts. So something you would have kind of thought for a while, you might look at this and be like, you may disparage of that, or you might say, look, obviously full-time athletes on gear can do that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but for the rest of us, we have to do something different. But I have seen and helped some athletes, and one or two of my more talented athletes have trained in a similar fashion, where they've done a higher frequency of just full snatch and clean and jerk. This is something that athletes will get to eventually, and it's not necessarily dependent on performance enhancing drugs. Of course, performance enhancing drugs make a huge difference to this style of training in terms of results, but it is possible for some talented individuals with the right recovery capacities, with the right amount of low external stresses on their life. Maybe they're in college, maybe they're not working full time, whatever position they've put themselves in to prioritize training, they can train similar to this. Now, of course, the results won't be the same, the volume and intensity won't be the same, but the format can work quite well. So for a lot of you, this doesn't really matter, but it's something worth bearing in mind. It's something that can be done. by a lot of natural athletes eventually, as high frequency snatch, clean, jerk is ultimately the goal for all athletes regardless of performance enhancing drugs. But it is something that is quite interesting. It's not the only way, but it's certainly a very valid way, and we do see this from a lot of ex-Soviet countries. It's a very valid format. And as Viktor said, they still go through a lot of periodization and different levels of intensity, so it's not maximum all year round. Next thing is Viktor's low power clean. So Viktor said he did 160 power clean to 205 clean and jerk. Typically, probably maybe 15 to 20 kilos lower than you would typically see for someone with 200 plus clean and jerk. But just interesting to note that the low relevance of a power clean to clean ratio, it's not really something that matters so much. Some lifters very much enjoy it and they find a lot of benefit in it, and it's great for those, but I wouldn't really worry about the ratio of your power clean to your full clean, as they're very different movements. If you're a huge discrepancy, it may benefit your lift to bring up your power clean, but oftentimes it's not the best place to look. There's oftentimes other ways and other more efficient ways of fixing your clean rather than bring up your power clean. Of course, then Viktor talking about clean and jerking 205 with a 210 kilo front squat. I think that's just testament to how efficient his technique is. We do see this with lighter lifters. We generally don't see this with heavyweights or super heavyweights. We don't see this level of efficiency. Absolute weight at the end of the day is still an absolute weight. 200 kilos is heavy for everyone, and so is 250 kilos. But the differences in these start to kind of, you don't see that level of efficiency when you get to super heavyweights. We don't see super heavyweights clean and jerking 260 with a 265 kilo front squat. We do see this with some lighter lifters, and we see it more often. I'd imagine there's a similar bell curve effect with lighter lifters, where you'll probably see more efficient lifters, probably somewhere on the middleweight classes, and then it's certainly dropping off as it gets heavier. We're not going to see, illy clean and jerking 235 with a 240 front squat, that kind of aspect. Whereas with Viktor, we are seeing that he's in 205 with a 210. However, you will notice he did have a 260 kilo back squat. So this idea that you don't need to have a lot of leg strength. Viktor was poor at front squatting, however, clearly had excessive back squat strength. 260 would be right around the rounds of where you'd probably want to be for a 205 kilo clean and jerk or 200 kilos. Maybe a little bit more. We'll typically see people with more, but Viktor certainly had the leg strength. However, as he mentioned, it was probably his back squat strength that was the issue. Then I think another interesting aspect was the finding the right start position and how much it could affect the lift. So going from a very aggressive dive bomb start, or still someone who likes to take a long time. For example, someone like Sorab Muradi takes a long time to set up for the barbell. Who else does a long time? So Viktor obviously goes for a very aggressive dynamic start and works quite well for him, and he gets a lot of speed off the ground like we discussed initially in the video. But other lifters then might take a longer time and prefer that. And this is obviously dependent on psychology, your training, your physiology, your genetics, a whole host of factors which are hard to define sometimes. But it's worth noting that how much of a difference a start position can make to the lift, and it's worth playing around with it and see where you end up. I hope you enjoyed the video. It helps a lot if these do well, because I can get other lifters, because when they see that I've done other good lifters, they're like, oh, that's he's obviously legitimate. So as I say, liking comments, like aggressively liking, like if you liked it at all, press the like button, because that helps YouTube a lot. And leaving comments, preferably anything at all, but saying what lifters you might like would be helpful. If there's a lot of lifters, if there's a lift you see that you'd like to get and they're quite big, just like that comment so I can go to that lifter and be like, look, 200 people want you, Lasha. That's all I'll say. Thanks, guys.